Joining us to discuss further, founder and executive director of the National Security Institute, Jamil Jaffer. Jamil, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Natasha.
Do you believe that Iran will actually be shutting down its morality police?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, you have the Attorney General of Iran, the former head of their Supreme Clerical Court, Jaffer, saying that the time has come for the morality police to be disbanded, that it has been disbanded. But it's not clear that that's actually going to happen. Those were remarks reported by the Iranian official news agency. But he also said that the judiciary, which he's part of, will ultimately enforce the morality codes. So it may be a distinction without a difference. Even if you get rid of the morality police, in name, if they're still enforcing the same rules, it doesn't matter a whole lot. So I think Professor Aram is right to be concerned, as is Joe Khalili, your correspondent there from Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Explain that more. So if they are shut down, what does it practically mean for the freedoms of the people? Does it automatically mean women can have the freedom of dress, have their hair uncovered, or would the same law just be policed by another force?
That's exactly right, Natasha. You've hit the nail right on the head. It's very possible they'll simply enforce the law by a different entity, right? Or they'll haul them into court after the period. And as he said, the judiciary will enforce it. So, this may not be material. The real question will be, are they going to change the hijab rules? Are they going to change other rules? And are they going to stop enforcing morality the way that the morality police did with billy clubs and in the streets, assaulting women and the like, which is what led to the situation we're in, this death of Mahsa Amini.
If the lives of women there is not appreciably different, why do this at all? Is it simply to appease protesters enough to put an end to the months and months of unrest there?
I think that's right. I mean, I think the Iranian government is trying to figure out how to deal with these protests. They're unprecedented in Iranian history, other than the 1979 revolution. In the past, when you've seen protests like this, they've been cracked down upon hard by the government. You have to wonder why they're not cracking down these protests. Some of it may have to do with the fact of Iranian culture and larger Muslim culture, that it's going to be very hard to crack down on women and daughters and families in these protests. And so I think that may be what they're grappling with, and that may actually lead to real change. We've seen this in South Sudan before, where women have led protests and led to fundamental societal change. So that may be what's happening here, Natasha.
If the protesters do not let up, do you think the government is likely to make more concessions? Are we seeing a turning point from them?
Well, that's also hard to know, because if these concessions are real, that may be material. If they're not real, well, then it doesn't matter a lot. If they are real, though, then what they've done is they've given the protesters an insight into what it takes to get change in the regime's policies. And this may be the beginning of larger changes. But to say that now, I think, Natasha, would be to get way ahead of ourselves. The real question now is this a real change or not? And what does it mean appreciably for the lives of those women and young people in Iran who clearly don't support what their government's done in terms of these laws, the way they're enforcing them upon their own people?
I appreciate that. And I do want to ask you about another aspect that our correspondent Joe Khalili brought up. Do you believe that the Iranian soccer team returning home is safe?
Well, that's a hard question to know also. Obviously, the Iranian government was very upset with what happened that first game. You did see some players responding to what we believe were threats made against their families, some of them mouthing the words of the song in the second game there. And now they're on their way home. Of course, at the same time, Natasha, the world is watching. And so what the Iranian government needs to know is not only the protesters there in Iran watching, and those women on the streets, the women and ladies on the streets, and the protesters, the men that are coming alongside them, but the world is now watching what happens to these soccer players. The Iranian government should step very carefully if they plan to take action against them or their families.
I appreciate that. And I know that our correspondent was speaking about an Iranian climber whose home was, in some reports, destroyed by the government. Appreciably, what would the U.S. do if the soccer team returned home and they were the victims of harassment or violence?
To date, Natasha, the U.S. government has done a lot more than we've done in the past, which is we've been very out there in support of the Iranian protesters and their right to protest against the regime. But of course, that doesn't mean a lot if we're not actually willing to give them material support and supplies. And frankly, I've been an advocate, Natasha, for giving more to them immediately, getting more information to Iran, and really pressing forward. The Iranian people need to decide whether their regime needs to change its policies or be changed completely. But that doesn't mean countries like the United States and our allies in the Middle East can't support the protesters and their legitimate protests against the government and the treatment of women in that country.
Jamil Jaffer, always appreciate the context. Thank you so much for your time.